We're going to start to talk about cells today. Before we begin, I'd like you to think about these three questions. Why do you think cells weren't discovered until 1665? What invention do you think made their discovery possible? And do you think people can ever see cells with the naked eye? Explain your answer. Take a second and answer those three questions. So we're going to begin talking about what a cell is today. Most cells are usually microscopic. There are some larger cells. If you go to your refrigerator and you look at the eggs in your refrigerator, that is one single cell. So some cells are bigger than other cells, and we do not actually need a microscope to see them, but most are microscopic. They are the smallest unit of structure and function of life. There are two main types of cells. They are eukaryotic and prokaryotic. Prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. They're very simple cells like bacteria. And there are eukaryotic cells which have a nucleus. Robert Hooke was the first person to discover cells. What he saw was cork. He had a very simple microscope. He named what he saw under the microscope cells because they reminded him of the chambers of the sleeping chambers of the monks at the monastery, and those were called cells. So that's where the term cells comes from. He did discover these, but he wasn't sure about what their functions were and what they did. Antoine Leeuwenhoek was able to take and develop a microscope that was more powerful than what Hooke had used. What you see is a picture there. And he was the first person who observed bacteria, and he was able to describe red blood cells. Matthias Schleiden concluded that all plant tissues are composed of cells. And he declared that cells were the building blocks of all plant life. He also thought that there had to be some type of importance with the nucleus of the cells. This was in 1838. Theodor Schwann concluded that all animal tissues had cells as well. He collaborated with Schleiden, and they formed a new theory in biology around 1839. And this was the start of what we call the cell theory. And the cell theory at the time stated that all organisms are composed of one or more cells, and that all cells are the basic units of life. This theory is as important to biology and life science as atomic theory is to chemistry. These are still part of cell theory today, but it has been added on to because as we get more information, we get more changes to science, and we are able to further develop our theories. So Virchow proposed that cells divide. So he decided that looking at cells under microscopes, what we see is we see one cell coming from an existing cell. This is the third piece of our modern scientific theory, and this was added to cell theory around 1855. So our modern cell theory states three things. All living things are composed of one or more cells. Cells are the basic unit of life, and all cells come from existing cells. This work from all of these scientists comes together to form our modern day science cell theory. So when we talk about cells, most are too small to be seen with a microscope. A few are larger, but not all are larger. Some cells are so small that we can only see them with a microscope. Most cells are small because cells that are small work better than larger cells. So, we talked before that we have two basic types of cells. We have prokaryotic and eukaryotic. When we classify these things, and scientists love to classify and group things. So when we classify things, prokaryotic cells fall into the domains of bacteria and archaea.
Kelly Stanley, please report to the security office.
Eukaryotic cells fall into the domain eukaryote, and they make up the kingdoms protist, fungi, plant, and animal. So plants, animals, fungi, and protists are all made up of eukaryotic cells. Bacteria is made up of prokaryotic cells. There are some things that are similar between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. They all have DNA. They all have a cell membrane. They both have cytoplasm. And they both have ribosomes, which make proteins. What's different? Prokaryotes have no nucleus. They have no organelles. And organelles are the little membrane-bound structures inside eukaryotic cells that carry out the specific jobs in a cell. Prokaryotes are unicellular and very simple organisms. They are the oldest type of cell. They are small. Their DNA floats around out in the nucleus, and they reproduce asexually. Eukaryotic cells are going to have a nucleus. They have organelles. They could be unicellular or multicellular. The theory is that they evolved from prokaryotic cells. They're larger. They have a nucleus with DNA located inside, and they reproduce sexually. We're going to spend most of our time looking at eukaryotic cells. There are two types of eukaryotic cells, plant and animal cells. They have nucleus and they have other organelles within them. So what is an organelle? An organelle is a tiny structure with a membrane that performs a certain job within a cell. We're going to talk about several organelles that you need to know their names and their structures and what their functions in each cell. So we're going to talk about the cell membrane, the nucleus, the cytoplasm, the mitochondria, and the vacuoles. And these are all located within the animal cells. Plant cells are going to have all of those things, but they also have a cell wall that surrounds the cell membrane. Most of the times, plant cells are more square-shaped and animal cells are more round-shaped. Plant cells also have chloroplast in them, which is where photosynthesis occurs. So let's take a look at each one of these. The cell membrane is what controls what goes in and out of each cell. It is made up of two layers. The plant cell has a cell membrane, but that cell membrane is surrounded by the cell wall. It maintains homeostasis, it controls what goes in and out, and it provides protection for the cell. Cell wall is stronger, more rigid. It is surrounding the cell membrane. It provides additional protection and support, and it allows the plants to stand up, and it also allows plant cells to stack on top of each other. That's why trees can grow so tall. The nucleus is found in both plant and animal cells. It controls everything that goes on within the cell, and it contains the DNA or the genetic material. The cytoplasm is kind of like a jelly-like substance that is in the cell, and it is found in both plant and animal cells. It is also found in prokaryotes, and it supports and protects the organelles of the cell. Mitochondria is what we would refer to as the powerhouse of the cell. It provides energy. it breaks down our sugar molecules and converts them into usable energy for the cell. It kind of looks like a bean shape, but there are all sorts of folds inside where the energy gets converted. It's the powerhouse or the energy plant in the cell. A vacuole is found in both plant and animals cells. They are fluid-filled sacs. They are basically warehouses. They store the extra stuff. They are much longer and much larger in a plant cell than in an animal cell, because they hold all the excess water that the plant and that needs for photosynthesis. Chloroplasts are found only in plant cells. They are green. They contain chlorophyll, which is what makes a plant green. They convert the energy from the sun into sugar so that the plants have energy. This is where photosynthesis actually occurs. A few other organelles that you need to know that are found in both plant and animal cells are lysosomes. That's where digestion breaks down and removes the excess waste from plants and animal cells. Ribosomes, which look like kind of little tiny dots sprinkled through the cell. And this is where proteins are made. And the endoplasmic reticulum, which is that folded green thing that you see there in the cell diagram, and that is responsible for moving things throughout the cell. What I'd like you to take and do is I would like you to answer these 3 questions now. List the 3 parts of the cell theory. Can you differentiate the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells? Tell me the difference in the structures found in plant and animal cells. And tell the difference in the function of plant and animal cells organelles, including the cell wall, cell membrane, mitochondria, cytoplasm, and vacuole. And when you are finished, please send me a picture of your notes.